Oh, hi there, and welcome back. I'm Trustin, and this is another episode of Slavers of the Rim. When we last left off, we found a rather dead visitor who happened to run into the insects. It's quite unfortunate for them. As we check in with the colonist, we see that Trustin is busy building a chess table, and Jenny is cutting stone blocks for future use. A little while later, Trustin is mining, Jenny is still working on those stone blocks, and we find Colt, who is hauling back some meals for later consumption. As we're going by, we notice that there are some insect jelly that have been there from when the former visitors killed all of the insects in here. I take that off restriction so that way the colonists can haul that back at a later time. As Colt brings the meals back into storage, he has a seat at the table near Jenny, and there we see it, the very first advancement that Colt makes. It does look like he was rejected by Jenny, however this will have an impact on his mood. As you can see here, he has now a -5 mood boost, whereas Trustin has a +8 as well as got some 11, which is a +14. In the last episode, Trustin got inspired to go do some shooting. He's inspired for the next 8 days, so I decided to take a look at my wildlife tab and see if there was any wildlife. However, I saw that there were a bunch of insects. I then decided to create a zone, so that way they wouldn't go inside the insect hive. So what I did was I created a new zone, and then I actually inverted that zone, so I allowed everything else except for that area. This would ensure that my colonists are safe as they wander around the map unsupervised. I decided to call the zone the no-go zone. After that, it was back to work. As Trustin continued mining, Jenny continued crafting blocks, and Colt did, well, Colt things. That evening, I decided to lay down some flooring to make things look a little nicer for my colonists. I also expanded my grow zone a bit, and at that point I realized I was planting potatoes instead of rice. After everybody had went to bed, I thought about putting down a research table so that way we could research some more things. And as I did, ambrosia sprouted across the map. Ambrosia can be a valuable resource if harvested correctly. It's very valuable. It's also a very addictive drug. After the colonists had been working on the tile a bit, I realized that I was laying down tile and not cobblestone. Tile enhances the beauty of a place, whereas cobblestone does not. So I wanted to try to save those resources. Then once again, I went looking for something to hunt. found a small pack of Muffalo and decided to hunt them. And then it was time to name the colony. I already got a name suggestion, so I decided to go with that. The name would be the Slavers of Gensylvania, whereas our settlement would just be called Gensylvania. And here we see Trustin giving his first attempt at hunting a Muffalo. He decides to give up on the first one and go after this closer one. Eventually, after shooting for a period of time, it does work out for him. It's alright that it takes him a bit, because each time he fires his weapon, it increases his skill. After a successful hunt, Trustin is now butchering his new Muffalo. And we can see that the other colonists are eating the insect jelly. I forgot to forbid it. And we can see Trustin attempting to train Xanadu. He needs 3 successful attempts, and this happens to be the first of the 3. After that, Trustin goes to start cooking. Colt hauls. Meanwhile, Jenny's grabbing some more stone blocks to create tiling for the bedrooms. I create a quick build to make 200 marble blocks, so that way we have enough to work on the tiles for the bedrooms and eventually the common room. After a long day of work, the colonists finally settle down and get some rest for the evening. As we rejoin the colonists the next morning, we see that a buffalo is attempting to get some rest and heal up for being shot by Trustin, and then the psychic soothe comes to an end. When we return back to the settlement, we see that Trustin has just failed trying to train Xanadu. Later that day, I put in a crafting table and rearranged some of the furniture to try to get double use out of that stool. And then finally our research bench is complete and everyone settles in for another night at the Rim. The next morning we see Trustin holding his rifle, running off to go hunt some Muffalo. I realize that these pesky trees are popping up, blocking the wind from my wind turbine, so I decide to place an order to cut them down again. I created a bill for Jenny to make some dusters, so that way it would protect us from the heat later on. And then I decide upon our first research project, which is batteries. I set my cooler to cool below freezing, so that way it freezes all the food in there so it stays fresh for longer. Later that night, around 2 in the morning, there happens to be a person walking by named Falcon. It's also at this time that I decide to add some more hunting to Trustin's list. I do take a look at everyone's moods to make sure that no one is breaking, and at that time, an exotic trader comes by. That's excellent. I was hoping I would be able to trade with someone today. As Trustin makes his way over to the Muffalo, starts hunting, I debate on where the traders are going to come through, if they're going to walk through that insect hive or not. And just at that time, a solar flare happens, which means that all of our electronics are going to be down. I do trade with the trader, and I see that our insect jelly is almost depleted, so I end up selling the last 6 we have for 31 silver. I also take a hard look at this bionic arm. Remembering that Trustin has some injuries to his leg, I think about getting a bionic leg in the near future. And we see Trustin once again trying to train Xanadu. As he fails, he gets upset and walks away with his rifle. It doesn't look good. Later on that day, Trustin's returning from his hunt, and we have a cargo pod drop. And we have 102 units of Devil Strand. I don't know much about this, but I do know that it offers really good fire protection. And a little later that day, the solar flare ends, so that way we have lights once again in our settlement. It also means that the AC can kick on. I had noticed that every time Trustin would go out to hunt, he would get about halfway there, then turn around to try to satisfy one of his other needs like hunger or sleep. This time around, I decided to draft him and have him fire at the Muffalo myself. I was going to take 1 or 2 home with me tonight. So as he's firing at this one, I noticed that he lands some shots on some other Muffalo as they're passing around, so I decided to put them out of their misery and try to kill them as well. This is where things go wrong. The Muffalo have a 2% chance to attack back, or revenge, and in this case, it happens rather quickly. I had forgotten about Trustin's stump leg, so I try to make him walk back. Unfortunately, the Muffalo happened to be faster than he is. I wasn't entirely sure what to do at this point, however the Muffalo passed by Trustin without killing him, just knocking him unconscious. I finally remembered to take a look at Trustin's injuries. It looks like he has quite a few bruises, a cracked skull, and a completely destroyed left middle finger. So I may have panicked a little, and I drafted both of my colonists and put them in the main room, and then I restricted him to just that main room, hoping that the Muffalo would just relax. After making sure to set their zones, I let Colt and Jenny just kind of do their thing, so they researched and crafted. Meanwhile, Trustin finally recovered from his shock, so I decided to have him equip his rifle again and then eat some food. I didn't want him to get too close to the Muffalo, because they might turn on him again. As the Muffalo approached, in all their rage, they decided to attack the trade caravan that was there. Thankfully, the trade caravan could fight back. As Colt's researching inside and Jenny's creating a duster, this enormous fight is happening just outside their doors, and they're both completely fine. During the fight, one of the tradesmen gets knocked unconscious, and then everyone decided to leave, so they left a lot of Muffalo and an unconscious tradesman right outside my door. And as they're leaving is when we get our first quest, the Ambush Countess. I decided to not take it right at this moment and instead focus on trying to heal Baldwin. I take a look at his wounds and see that he also has a right big toe that was destroyed, as well as some other cracks and bruises. It shouldn't be too bad to try to patch him up. So Jenny heads on outside and collects Baldwin and puts him in a recovery bed. Well, puts him on the floor inside the common room. As Jenny tends to Baldwin and Trustin hobbles back to his bed, I decide to take the quest. I know that for this quest I'm just going to have the Countess and then one crazy man-hunting squirrel chasing her. I think I can handle that even in this state. However, just before I accept the quest, a heat wave rolls in. Thankfully I've had Jenny making dusters. As the Countess is making her way over to the colony, we do see that the man-hunting squirrel has entered the map. Colt is tending to Trustin, so I decided to not draft him. And instead try to make the Countess fight. But I realize she doesn't even have a weapon. So I grab Jenny, and Jenny runs out with her plasteel knife to stab that squirrel. Jenny makes quick work of that squirrel. And then, before too long, the shuttle arrives to take the Countess away. The Countess quickly boards the shuttle, as it doesn't look like she really likes spending time in her colony. Then, the shuttle departs. After that, we see that Colt has gotten quite a few rewards and titles. He is now a Yeoman of the Empire. It shows that we also completed the quest and got a sci-link that I totally forgot about. I noticed that there was a hole in our butcher area, which is letting all the cool air escape, so I quickly tended to that. I added some wood-based cooling units to hopefully cool down the place during the heat wave. And just as I was doing that, a flash storm occurred. Flash storms can be quite dangerous if they are close to your base. They catch fire to everything and there's no rain to put them out. However, I did notice that where the flash storm was at was pretty far from our base, so I think we'll be okay. After the flash storm had ended, I take a look and see the fire, and I also notice that we have a couple natural fire blocks in between us and where the fire is, so we're okay. Randy certainly has been throwing some weird stuff at us lately. Even though Trustin isn't fully recovered, he gets up and starts cooking some meals for everybody. The next morning, batteries are complete, so that's our first project down, so we start working on our second one. After some thought, I decided solar panels was the next way to go. We are having some power issues. Since we have batteries researched, I decided to make a battery storage area. Although I totally don't realize it at the moment, I'm building a building right in front of a wind turbine. The wind turbine's not going to work very well. Around 2 o'clock in the afternoon, there's an eclipse, but after that, nothing much happens. Jenny finally finishes her Devil Strand duster and equips it, and looks rather dashing, I have to say. You can also see that her heat tolerance is up quite a bit, 48 degrees Celsius. Later that evening, we get the notification that Baldwin is no longer incapable of walking. However, he still decides to relax and try to heal up a bit more before taking off. At this point, I realized that his light machine gun was outside. I don't know how I overlooked that. And at this same time, I also realized that the Psylink was outside, so I had Colt grab it, as well as the light machine gun. So now Colt has some psychic abilities. Well, he only has one at the moment. It's Pain Block, which isn't terrible. Pain Block allows people to ignore movement penalties when they're damaged. The following morning, we get the notification that Trustin is finally fully healed. The only thing left is his destroyed middle finger. However, that doesn't affect his work, so we're okay. I try to solve the solar power issue that we're having by creating another wind turbine, not realizing that the other turbine isn't going to work very well once we get that building up. I dismantle the roof above the second turbine to make sure that one can function properly. I then have Trustin focus on some of the building aspects. Later in the evening, as I'm going over some things, I realize that the building I created is actually blocking that turbine, so I laid out a blueprint to relocate that to the other side so the wind turbine can function properly. As Jenny and Trustin are going around repairing the base, Colt continues his research, and then finally we have solar panels. I immediately decide to build one right next to that wind turbine, so hopefully this will solve our problem with the energy once and for all. One issue with the energy was that I was not able to keep the butcher and the kitchen area frozen, so we were having things rot away. As Trustin and Jenny are mining, we have some rare thrumbos that join us. Some might say that these are the most valuable animals in the game. Looking at some of their stats here, we see that the market value is 4,000 silver, which is quite ridiculous, The meat amount is 360 and the leather amount is 120. That's really, really good. However, upon looking at this, I noticed that the taming skill is 10, which unfortunately we don't have anybody that would be able to tame them. So I think we're just going to let them go for now. During the night, I decided to lay out the first of many plans for our defenses. I decided to wall off the bottom area of the map so that way no one can sneak up on us. And I do this with granite because it is a very, very durable material. Remember that light machine gun I found a while back? I finally have Colt equip that. And as he's doing that, we have some visitors that decide they were going to pass through. Doesn't look like they have anything to trade. And that evening, as night falls, around midnight, Baldwin decides to get up and start heading back to his camp. While he's making his way over there, I decided to change our potato crop to a rice crop. And as he leaves the map, you see that our relationship increases by 22, which is pretty nice. And then in the morning, in the rain, Colt decides to start planting that rice. And about an hour later, Trustin finally teaches Xanadu to haul things, so I lift her restrictions so that way she can go around the map and grab anything we need. As I'm doing that, a transport pod crashes, and we find the survivor only has 7 hours to live. They are a member of the Empire faction, so I decide I would try to rescue them. I would like to have good standings and try to use them as an ally later on. As that person is recovering, I decide to lay out the next and last big building of this episode. I decide to build a rather large storage area for all the wealth that we're accumulating as we're out here on the rim. And even though I deconstructed that battery area previously, I did not take down the roof. So looking at my turbine, I can see that there's an issue, so I decided to take down the roof and hopefully that fixes it. And immediately we can see an improvement. And as everyone settles in, and I go and inspect the area, there's a fire that occurs. But it looks like the rain puts it out rather quickly, so I don't even know where it was at. And then, almost instantly, some cargo pods drop. What's in them? Smoke leaf. Sometime later, the storage unit is complete. So all that's left is to chop down some trees that are on the inside and put up the roof. And we can see Xanadu making use of her new ability by hauling some of the goods into our new storage unit. After messing around a bit with the permissions for what's going to be stored where, Jenny gets back to work and Trustin soon follows her. However, some unfortunate news as a plague is struck. Colt immediately tends to himself and gets some rest. I didn't realize it, but not only does Colt have the plague, so does Trustin. So later that evening I click on the plague and I see that Trustin has it as well. Thankfully, he's already tended to himself. And with that, we'll start wrapping up this episode as Jenny heads to bed and Colt and Trustin both have the plague. As always, thank you for watching. If you have any tips or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below. And if you enjoy this content, please like and subscribe.